We can spend a lot of time talking about maps, since there are just so many features in the Map API. But the most basic one is markers. We can add a marker to a map using this API. Notice that we can pass an encoded image that will be used instead of the default image. In this case, I chose to pass null. The resulting map looks like this. Pretty familiar, but a bit limited. We don't have a lot of control over the marker. A marker is great, but sometimes we want more. Why not place a component on the map in the location that we want? This used to be a problem. Historically, all native components, commonly referred to as peer or heavyweight components, were always on top. We solved this problem by going through a lot of hoops, and it's now possible to place a component on top of the map. However, it's still not trivial. How do we know where to place the component? We could use glass pane to draw on top of the map, but that's a bit limiting and requires a lot of low-level code. We need a simple layout manager that allows us to place components based on their longitude and latitude values. It sounds hard to create a layout manager, but it really isn't. In this layout manager, I make some assumptions, such as an assumption that the layout manager is placed exactly on top of a map container within a layered layout. This means that when we position a component, it will be exactly above the map. The first step in implementing the layout manager is extending the layout class. Notice I also implement the map listener interface, so the layout can update positions when the map changes. In the constructor, I break encapsulation a bit by binding the map listener. This isn't ideal code, but it can work for our current purposes. In the future, I hope to create a more generic version of this class in the map cn1lib. Even when we do that, this code would still be useful to explain how things like this work. The map layout is a constraint-based layout, similar to border layout. That means you need to add a component to the map layout with a constraint, in this case a coordinate object. Notice I do a cast, so if someone adds a component with a different object type as a constraint, he will get a class cast exception. This is the entire layout manager class. Notice it's only 2 pages in large font. The area surrounded in red is the entire layout code. It's trivial. First, we iterate over the components within the parent container. We get the current coordinate that we added with the constraint. We can then use the Map API to convert the coordinate to a point in the screen. Normally, we shouldn't call setSize, setX, or setY, but a layout manager is a special case. It's the one place where we are supposed to set the component position and size. We do several things here. We give all components their natural preferred size. Some layout managers do that, others don't. In our case, using the preferred size makes a lot of sense. The next thing we do is set the X and Y based on the screen point we got from the map. Notice we position the coordinate in the center below the component, which turns out nicely for the component type I tried. but it might make sense to make this more configurable. And that's it. This is effectively the entire Layout Manager logic. Most layout managers should define a preferred size, but since we will always reside on top of a map, we can rely on its preferred size to define the amount of space required. This is the event callback for map modification. Every time the map is modified, we revalidate the parent and trigger repositioning of the components. This breaks the separation between Layout Manager and the parent component. So this isn't necessarily a best practice in terms of design, but for the purposes of a simple tutorial, it works. Adapting our previous code, I can just create a button to represent Moscone instead of a marker. Notice I wrap the map container with a markers container that uses the map layout. I can now do whatever I want with the button. When I add it, I need to pass the coordinate object of Moscone for this thing to work. And this is the result. It doesn't look much different on the surface, but for us this is a huge difference. Instead of markers, I can just place anything I want anywhere on top of the map. That's huge. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this informative.